A beatdown by the Bay. Who do we blame for the Patriots' blowout loss to the Seahawks in the Super Bowl? And did the Patriots even deserve to get there? One last Super Bowl edition of the Boston Globe Sports Report starts right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm Ben Volin. He's Dan Shaughnessy. We're live here at the offices, the newsroom of the San Francisco Chronicle, the day after Super Bowl 60. This was an ugly one. The Seahawks beat down the Patriots 29-13, and frankly, wasn't even that close. Patriots were shut out through three quarters, tacked on a couple garbage time touchdowns just to make it a little bit respectable. But Dan, I hate to say it, but less than 24 hours after the game ended, seems the overwhelming narrative across the country is that the Patriots didn't deserve to be in this game.
Well, you and I took the bus back from Santa Clara, San Jose, wherever the hell we were for that game last night. And I've been in my room with ESPN on. It's like I wrote that it was a little bit like the 46-10 game against the Bears in New Orleans in 1986. And that game singularly kind of torpedoed a season that was pretty good because that team won road playoff games in Miami against the Raiders. And I worry about this game doing that to this season. This was a wonderful Patriots season. It was. And last night's game, ugly as it was, shouldn't take away from the beauty and the wonderfulness of the narrative of the 2025 Patriots. But right now, it's hot out there, and I think that they need to – it's almost like they wish they could play again next week to kind of get their reputation back because, yes, the inference now is that – the real Super Bowl was the NFC Championship game between the Rams and Seattle. And it just got away fast. You could tell from the jump, you're the football guy. But when that game started last night, it felt not competitive, and the Patriots were playing very safe, not trying anything, and just hoping they could get defensive scores or turnovers or something to keep themselves in the game. Didn't happen.
Yeah, and that's how they survived and advanced through the playoffs, is with their defense putting up points and making up for the offense. You said maybe the real Super Bowl was the NFC Championship game. Maybe the real AFC Championship game was that Broncos-Bills game a couple weeks ago where Josh Allen is going toe-to-toe with Bo Nix, and then unfortunately Bo Nix breaks his ankle. Another huge break for the Patriots. I'll say this. First of all, I agree with you. Nothing should take away from what a tremendous season it was for the Patriots. So unexpected, so filled with joy that it was just a really fun journey from start to finish. But the way they played last night, it did not prove in any stretch that they are an elite team, and it did not quell any of the talk that people have been saying all season about how they played a cupcake schedule and everything fell their way. Even in the playoffs, when they played really good teams, weather was a big factor. You know, they played broken down teams. Justin Herbert didn't have an offensive line. C.J. Stroud was a mess. They got Jarrett Stidham in the snow. They finally had to play a real team in a real game with no, as few variables as possible. Good weather, nothing that, no home field advantage, and the Patriots really got exposed.
And it does kind of make you wonder, Ben. I mean, you see a lot of football. It felt to me like the Bills would have put up a better game than the Patriots did last night, just because of their gravitas, their status. Josh Allen, more prepared for the moment. These guys did not feel prepared for the moment.
No, and I think that's one of the bigger disappointing angles, too, of the game is that where were the adjustments? Yeah. Where was Josh McDaniels coming up with something new and fresh that we hadn't seen before? Where was rolling Drake May out of the pocket to get him away from trouble? And defensively, I actually thought they held up pretty well. They kept holding the Seahawks to field goals, but the offense just had nothing. And like I said, they were able to get by with no offense against the Texans at home in a cold game, against the Broncos in a blizzard, against their backup quarterback. But in a real game, they did not look like an elite team.
Yeah, that's tough with the offense. I mean, it was historically bad. They didn't score a point in the first three quarters. Hasn't been done since 1975, the Vikings, if you want to look it up. And the fact that their first 9 drives, 8 punts, and then a fumble, giving the ball in their own territory, so that was an easy score. It was 19-0 beginning of the fourth, and it felt worse. And Patriot fans are good. New England fans are good because they see that score. They see Drake May's final numbers, and Other fans might say, yeah, it doesn't look that bad. It was bad. And you know that was all acquired in garbage time and just, the game had been decided and there was a lot of phony numbers put on the board there. But this thing was not competitive. It was unfortunate. And to your point, Ben, with the offense, where was the fake punt or where was the Philly special or just something to mix it up a little bit? They was playing so safe and it wasn't working.
No, and 8 possessions, 8 punts. There was one especially, I think they got it to 2nd and 1. And then they, got stuffed and threw incomplete and punted. And it's the Super Bowl. You got to come up with something a little bit more than that. But it was just not their night at all. And all credit to the Seahawks, too. That, to me, was an excellent team. Nationally, everyone was picking the Seahawks in a romp. Locally here in Boston, all of us Boston media thought the Patriots had a chance. Turns out we're just big homers. We didn't see what it was really about. The Seahawks were just an excellent team, dominated the Patriots from start to finish.
Yeah, we had seen them all year, so there was sort of this inference, well, the rest of the country's wrong because they haven't seen them all year like we have. Well, the rest of the country was right. They saw a team that won 8 games by 14 or more points, a team that led the league in point differential, 191, just blew out people, played in a tougher conference, and was just more Super Bowl ready than the Patriots were.
Real quick, we got about 30 seconds. Which is a worse loss for you? Getting blown out like this on an unexpected Super Bowl run or like when Brady and the Patriots lost to the Eagles that one time?
Well, I think that this was – the Brady team, they were a team of destiny. So losing to the Giants when they were 18-0,
sure, that
one never goes away. That's way worse than this. This thing feels like a little bit of a blip. They will be back, maybe not next year. They will be back. And it's just unfortunate that their narrative, the way they're being thought of right now, is so low, and we know they're better than that.
All right, very good, Dan. All right, coming up next after the break, more from Dan, Shaughnessy, and myself. Hey, let's find some people to blame for the Patriots' loss in Super Bowl 60.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show. Boy, Dan, I'm going to miss those lovely shots of San Francisco and this beautiful weather we got out here. All right, Super Bowl 60, pretty much a disaster for the Patriots. They lose 29-13 to the Seahawks, but it was a lot worse than that, Dan. When I ask you for who do you look at who is the most responsible? Who do we blame for this loss? Where do you start?
Well, Drake May's getting hammered around the country, and that's unfortunate. Some guys, Dan Marino got to a Super Bowl at the same age, lost, and never got back to it. You don't know if you're going to get back in this game, so it's dicey for him. I'm sure he wants to get back out in the field and restore his reputation right away. That's a little bit unfair because it's very unfair. The offensive line really let him down. You got to blame them the most for this. I mean, it was not a fair fight. He was scrambling the whole night long. They were in his face. Campbell, what was the number of pressures that Campbell allowed?
I saw, according to Next Gen, Will Campbell allowed 14 pressures, which was the most ever in a playoff game since they've been tracking this stuff for the last decade.
There you have it. So it turns out short arms are a thing. Maybe he's out of position. Maybe they got to move him to a different position. But that was unacceptable, and he was on turnstile all night and didn't talk after the game, which is not exactly great. Do better. But I think the O-line gets the bulk of it. And we can go down from there. Why don't you take the next one? Who else you want to blame?
Well, I think you made a great point first about Drake May. I like you, have been listening to the national chatter this morning, and Drake has been getting crushed.
Take cover.
Not only for his performance on Sunday night, but really for his whole playoff run. For the whole season, he was high completion percentage, pushing the ball downfield. You get to the playoffs, all 4 games, he's under 60%, and his play really fell off. His QBR, passer rating, among the worst performances. But to me, this is not on Drake. This is on, as you said, the offensive line. It was abysmal for the entire playoffs, completely got exposed between left tackle Will Campbell, left guard Jared Wilson, and frankly, center Garrett Bradbury as well. And none of the 5 played especially great, but it was glaring, I think, how bad the offensive line was throughout the playoff run. Now, the Patriots were able to overcome it in their home games or, on the road in Denver when they're playing Jarrett Stidham. They're able to overcome it because their defense picked off C.J. Stroud 4 times, and they scored points in their playoff games. Without the defense doing that, Drake May is just running for his life. And to me, it was like when Mahomes lost to Brady in that Super Bowl and just, running around like a chicken with his head cut off. So I put it on the offensive line. What else?
Well, I think the coaching comes into play in this thing. And again, we all love Mike Vrabel, Coach of the Year. Josh McDaniels, Coach of the Year as an assistant. So they had 2 Coaches of the Year. And there were really 0 adjustments at the half. To me, it's like they knew they didn't have his team as good as the Seattle team. So they was like, you know what? Let's just play a conservative here, hope to get a turnover, hope that our defense continues to play. The defense did play very well. Can't blame them at all. And wait for a big break, which they got in those conference championship games and the earlier playoff rounds. It didn't happen in this one. But I thought coming out of the half, there'd be different adjustments, and you just didn't see it. The third quarter was as bad as the first and second with the offensive side of the ball. Nothing there. We didn't see anything, any trickeration, the kind of stuff that they were kind of famous for. They just played too conservative.
Yeah, the trickeration, the gimmick plays, that would be great to cause a spark. But I do wonder if McDaniels wasn't able to make adjustments just because they were so dominated up front. Whatever adjustment he was making, I saw a stat that Patriots running backs got hit in the backfield on 54% of their carries. So just massive,
Is that good?
a massive loss at the offensive line, and they have serious moves to consider this offseason, including moving Will Campbell inside to guard. Going back to the coaching, though, you mentioned, a great week awards-wise. Vrabel winning Coach of the Year, McDaniels winning Assistant Coach of the Year. I thought Vrabel was a little conservative in this one. The 8 possessions, 8 punts, never going for it, never putting the faith in his offense. But also late in the game, probably didn't matter. The Patriots weren't coming back to win, but they get down by 12, or they get down by 13, and he kicks the extra point to go down by 12 instead of going for 2 and trying to make it 11. That, to me, should have been a no-brainer. So it felt a little bit like they were asleep at the wheel last night. And
can I blame the owner just for one quick second? I mean, he's been a great owner here. We understand that. But he brought a little bad karma to the scene here this week. Didn't have a great week from a PR standpoint. Watch out for the circles you hang out in. Don't make your fans have to apologize for other things. And I don't think the players were affected by the Hall of Fame votes of Belichick or Kraft or any of that stuff. They don't care. That's ancient history. It doesn't bother them. It created a little bit of a distraction and circus for us. But I just thought that overall, people weren't as enamored with the Patriots as they might have been.
Yeah, for Kraft, it was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week. No question. And, for the Patriots, too, real quick, just glaring, I think they need some more help on offense. They have aging tight ends, probably need a little more help at receiver and then offensive line. All right, coming up next, more from Super Bowl 60. Dan and I are going to share our best stories and vignettes from the week here in San Francisco. Welcome back to the show, everybody. He's Dan Shaughnessy. I'm Ben Volin. We're live from the San Francisco Chronicle newsroom, wrapping up Super Bowl 60 week here in San Francisco. Dan, I was here for like 9 days. You were here for a long time as well. Our heads are spinning a little bit, but it was still, even though the Patriots got blown out, still a memorable week out here for Patriot Nation and for the media here in San Francisco. What were some of your favorite memories from the week?
I still love the city. It's been great being down here. I know you all don't care at home. We're in San Francisco for a week, but don't believe everything you hear and read. It's still a lovely town and having some hard times. There's a little bit of a homeless community, things like that. Not as great as it was maybe 30, 40 years ago, like a lot of things, like the newspaper, like us, et cetera. We're still trying. But, again, have some empathy. This was a great town. They did a great job as a host city. And we just have these memories of being here for the whole week. And they're fun memories. I mean, I know what Ben Volin's going to say, so I'm going to say it before he does. We were in a hotel where Malcolm Butler was in our hotel. It's pretty cool. You're in a hotel with Malcolm Butler. We're at the Super Bowl. And he was sitting at the bar one day, not having any alcoholic beverages, but he was watching the feed behind the bar, and it was the Super Bowl that Malcolm Butler became famous, making the play against the Seattle team. So Malcolm Butler watching Malcolm Butler, it doesn't get much better than that. Yeah, that was such a mind-blowing event. I think that was Thursday or Friday. We walk into the hotel bar, and there was Malcolm Butler sitting in the bar watching Malcolm Butler. Just a beautiful meta moment. And Malcolm Butler was great and very gracious all week, although what was interesting was he wasn't he's still not telling.
Right, yeah, and he didn't want a ton of attention that he was actually watching his own game at the bar. But that was a tremendous sight. For me, some of the top memories of this week were honestly how the game was really secondary to a lot of other storylines. You had the Hall of Fame voting. Everyone was talking about Belichick. Tony Dungy refusing to give up who he voted for. Kraft. You had Kraft ducking out of media day, obviously not talking to reporters where he usually does. Bad Bunny was a big story this week. It was like everything but the game.
Yeah, I got to go to the Sports Hub Super Bowl party. That was kind of fun. Zoe's over there and all their talents. And Marty Meehan, who's always there. We're talking to Marty Meehan about the UMass football team. Not a happy topic, as we know. And Maura Healey was in town. She came by our hotel. We saw her out and about. She likes sports. And during the game, she was texting me like, what are they doing? Kind of thing. So the governor had the same questions that you had at home while watching that game. And Super Bowl always brings out, you get some personalities, you get stars, you get politicians and like that. But it's still a good city for the fans to come to as well. And I think the fans here who did make the trip, maybe they didn't get their money's worth out of those tickets, but they had a good time here, I hope.
Yeah, I think the governor told us that this was her first trip to the Super Bowl, so I hate to say it, but maybe she's the jinx for the Patriots.
When you're walking around a Super Bowl host city, I was on Ellis Street, my favorite restaurant in the world, John's Grill. Thank you very much. And there's a guy, you all see people throwing footballs and fans and this and that, and there was a guy chucking footballs in the middle of the street like you'd see in a college quad or something. But the ball is going. It was like Doug Flutie's Hail Mary. It's going like 60 yards in the air. I'm like, this is not a regular fan at this game. So as I got closer to him, I said, who are you? He's all Matt Sims. His father's Phil Sims, Super Bowl winning quarterback. He played in the NFL. He played for Tennessee. But you can tell a professional quarterback, even in street clothes on the street, just chucking the football around.
Yeah, the ball comes off their hand a little bit differently. I'll remember this week, too, for Tom Brady stepping in it. He famously said on his podcast that he doesn't have a dog in the fight. And you know what? I'll give his ex-teammates credit. They didn't just, shy away and not make comments. They came out. I mean, Brewski, Will Fork, Asante Samuel, these guys came out and were like, what the heck, Tom?
Not okay, Tom.
How do you not have a dog in this fight?
You have a statue, and you said I'm a Patriot forever.
And I get it. He ended up hiring the Seahawks offensive coordinator as his head coach for the Raiders, and he probably doesn't want to offend anyone. But there's a way to thread that needle where you can say, obviously I'm rooting for obviously my heart is with the Patriots, but I just hope for a good game. And I don't think anyone would have blamed him if he had said that.
Thank God Bill and Jordan weren't here. That's all I know.
And you know what? The best celebrity sighting for the week, and we got about a minute here, is Dan Shaughnessy. You want to walk with a celebrity. Walk through downtown San Francisco with this guy. Walk through the Super Bowl with this guy. Yeah. Fans constantly stopping him, wanting to take his picture, share a story about the Red Sox.
Bring a suit of armor.
This guy was the biggest celebrity.
You need a suit of armor for some of those walks, and that's okay. We appreciate the passion of our fans, good and bad. They're great fans. Thanks for making the trip out here. Thanks for reading the Boston Globe. And don't forget, the Boston Globe sent about 17 people out here to bring the story to you, and that's old school media. We appreciate that.
Yeah, a lot of resources, and we even had print papers on the site here. Our good friend Sal Palantonio of ESPN holding it up on SportsCenter yesterday, the same week that the Washington Post cut their sports section. So I thought it was great to see the Globe showing up in force, having great coverage all week, and then having our print papers out here in San Francisco. All right, coming up next, one more break. Dan and I are going to talk about next year. What do the Patriots face in 2026, and can they run it back? Welcome back to the show, everybody. He's Dan Shaughnessy. I'm Ben Volin. All right, Dan, we spent a lot of time talking about the Patriots blowout in Super Bowl 60. Let's look ahead to the 2026 season. What do you foresee for these Patriots moving forward now?
Well, it's weird. You're in the Super Bowl with a young team, young quarterback. So traditionally that would be, oh, these guys are here to stay, and they'll be back here next year. It's hard to say that because, as we all know, the schedule is very easy this year. It's very hard next year. I think they're probably at the top tier of the conference, but not number one by any measure going into next year. And they're going to lose a lot more games next year, I expect. They only lost 3 this year. I mean, you can talk to me about the schedule next year.
The schedule, I think, is going to be significantly difficult next year. And not just because, obviously you don't know which teams are going to be good, but you do know that a trip to Kansas City is always going to be difficult. Even if it's week 2 and Mahomes is still not, fully himself coming off that ACL. But a trip to Kansas City is going to be difficult. They're going to have to go out west to the Chargers. They play the NFC North next year.
How about a trip to Seattle?
They were going to get a trip to Seattle, too. So that's 2 West Coast trips. Might end up being the kickoff game on Thursday night, do a Super Bowl rematch, Patriots at Seahawks. So, 2 trips to the West Coast. You're going to have to play the NFC North as well. So I think that's at Chicago, at Detroit. Those are going to be tough teams. You're going to have to play Josh Allen twice, obviously. And then, this season, I honestly think a big part of their success was they were able to get in a great rhythm with all these 1 o'clock Sunday starts. I think they played 13 or 14 of them every week. Set your watch to it on the same schedule. Forget about that for next year. They're going to be the darlings again. A lot of night games, probably maybe a Thanksgiving game, probably an international game. Maybe they go to Munich or something. The schedule is going to be all messed up next year, and it's going to be a lot harder to get into a rhythm.
Well, and a spinoff of yesterday's disaster, last night's disaster, I think, is that they know they have work to do. If they had played well or won that game last night, we'd be feeling great, no doubt. But you also might have a false sense of how good you are. They don't have that now. They know there's work to be done, and I think that work will be done through the draft, offensive line, taking care of issues, as you referenced earlier, receivers, age of some of their people like that. They spent a lot of money in this offseason. They drafted well, but there's work to be done. I think that this experience will make them do it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You don't want to put too much into one loss here in the Super Bowl, but it does put all your deficiencies in a glaring spotlight.
Yeah.
And so I think absolutely this was good for the Patriots in that it showed them, no, you are not a finished product. This was really just year one of a rebuild. You have many steps ahead. The first step has to be rebuilding the offensive line. And before last night, I would have said maybe defense needs to be your top priority just because they haven't used many draft picks on defensive players the last couple of years. They are a little older on defense, but they've got to fix the offensive line. I think they really need to consider moving Will Campbell to left guard. At first, I thought maybe you give him one more chance in a sophomore season, let him bulk up a little bit. He played well enough this year, but his playoff run, I think, was just very stark with how much opposing teams went after him. So I would move him inside. I think they need some help at, maybe move on from Garrett Bradbury at center. The offensive line absolutely has to be the first place they start.
One thing they don't need to do is address the quarterback issue. He didn't have a great game, didn't have a great playoff, but he is still the guy. He is a quarterback you build around. They know that. And any fans that are deceiving themselves by listening to the narratives on ESPN, stuff like that today, don't fall for it. This guy's still the guy. And I think the fact that he comes from such good stock, 3 older brothers, a sports family, he's not going to rattle. He's not going to become Tony Easton and never be the same guy again because of one bad game or not a great playoff. I think he's got the fortitude and the character to go from here, and you will see him again in big games very soon.
I couldn't agree more. This loss was not on Drake May. Was he at his sharpest? Of course not. The pass rush was in his face all night, and he would look like a deer in the headlights. But this was not on Drake May. This was on the people in front of him and the people around him. And the Patriots, definitely need to improve that. But, big picture, you got the coach, you got the quarterback. Every team is still jealous of the Patriots where they're at right now. We got about 10 seconds left. Things are the future's looking pretty bright here for the Patriots.
It's bright. I'm just not sure if we're going to be here at this time next year. The Super Bowl's at SoFi Stadium in LA next year, so that'll be there. We may not be, but take heart. It's a long road, and just be grateful they got here this once.
And next year is probably going to be a Hall of Fame palooza for the Patriots with Gronk, and I bet Belichick and Kraft get it in. All right, that's going to wrap it up here from San Francisco. He's Dan Shaughnessy. I'm Ben Volin. This has been the Boston Globe Sports Report.